another one.
So this question says, how to identify false negative tests in a testing set? And the question goes, hi guys, please share your real experience. How do you find false negative tests in your testing set? Or how do you control the appearance of false negative tests in your testing set? I read a couple of articles, but haven't had a clear understanding of the efficient ways it might be. Come like false positives, but are they false negatives? Are they negative falses or positive negative? I don't know. Let's see. So, how do I identify false negative tests in a testing set? The question's not entirely clear, but what I'm thinking you're referring to is you find so you're running tests and it fails, but it failed because something with the test and not necessarily with the functionality of the website. So I'm going to take the question as that, right? And let's start from the second one, right? How do you control the appearance of false negatives in your tests? Well, you need to optimize your tests so that they kind of like they handle these false negative tests in a gracious way. What do I mean by a gracious way, right? You need to implement like either retries or like if an actual test actually goes and it fails, you need to implement a retry, right? And what's a retry? So it's saying if this actual test failed, let's run it again to see if on the second time it's going to pass. Usually, like with these false negatives, right? When they fail, um, it's a flaky test, and then when you run it again, right? Now it has a now it should pass, right? If it fails two times in a row, then something's like you need better logic in the code. Um, but so that's how I like so that's like the way I would handle that in the testing set. But the question is, we didn't start our timer. That's the question. No, that is not the question. So the question is, so that's how it can control the appearance, right? If it fails the first time, then I say run the ones that failed, run all the tests that failed a second time, right? And if they pass, then we're good to go. If they fail, we need more investigation, right? Um, and that's how I would control the appearance of false negative tests in the testing set. Now, how do you find the false negatives? Well, you find them because like you review the results, you see the ones that fail. But the question is, why are you having false negatives? And especially if it's a lot of false negatives, right? You need to be able to account for that. You need to be able to handle that. And what is a way to handle that? So let's say in the actual code, right? Like you something that WebDriver is very, very popular for is having stale elements, right? So what I've done with stale elements in the past is I have like written into the code like a retry inside the code itself for stale elements. So let's say you get a stale element, right? And now he says, okay, handle that exception for the stale element and try it again X amount of times. Because usually what happens is when you get a stale element, you refresh the browser and then it passes, right? So either you're not handling the timing right, or you can write a fluent wait where it says wait for element not to be stale, right? Or you put a couple of those waits where you're like, wait for element to be visible, wait for element to be clickable, wait for element not to be stale. Those are some options like I've integrated those into my testing so that I can avoid those false negatives because it is super annoying that when you run the test again, it passes, but you have a bunch of failures because of something stupid, right? It's super annoying. So I would say those are two of the key ways to do it is handling retries on a global test level. So like, let's say the test actually failed, right? You want to retry, you want to gather all the failed tests and you want to retry those, right? I know I did that in, when I was in Selenium with Java, and using TestNG, like you can write a retry listener that'll gather all the failed tests and it will run them again. And the way that worked is right. I was using a test case management software. And what happened is with the retry logic, it will still record the test that failed, but when you go to review the actual results, it'll show you like the latest run, which will show you that everything that failed was from the retry. If it failed a second time, then we really need to investigate. If it failed the first time, and then the second time it passed, and that's might be a little flaky, but it's not like something that we just drop everything and see what's going on, right? That's with the retry logic. But then also more in a code level is that you want to handle your exceptions graciously, especially for stale elements, especially for element not clickable or element not visible. And that's another thing about the element not clickable. Sometimes you have where you might have a pop-up that shows up and then they can't click on it. So you need to be able to handle those type of pop-ups. All those different things, like you need to be able to handle those situations that come up to make your test more reliable, and you reduce the false negatives that occur. All right. So great question.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.